Hello, I'm Eric Nachamie. I'm the creator of the session of lessons and exercises of accepting our differences, ending hate, and these exercises are for schools, civic organizations, or anyone out there who's interested in reducing the divisiveness, reducing the hate in our society. I'm an author in Substack. I wrote the book Man in the Middle, collection of essays by Red, White, and Blue American. I've worked in local government for several years. I am not a teacher by license or certification. My background is political science and public administration, but throughout my career, I've aspired to improve the plight of those in society who have been disadvantaged, and to contribute to the civility in our society. So I think that I'm at least qualified to have come up with some helpful exercises here for groups. What I like to do is to go through this, through the different sections of the exercises just as a blueprint. You don't need the video necessarily. I will have a PDF provided that can be downloaded at your convenience, and I always try to provide my email contact information. I'll start with some of the motivation for creating this exercise, and also I've created an exercise that's I think on Classful, the Classful platform, about debating. And so I have an exercise there to help people debate, because one of the issues is we seem to have forgotten how to discuss our issues without getting angry, without getting to the point where we don't want to talk to others who don't agree with us, who we tend to stay in our political and geographical clusters, and that hasn't been healthy for our nation, or our world for that matter. I also think, and I have a YouTube channel, and I'm on different social media platforms, and so I don't want to be a hypocrite. I think social media can be great in its uses, but we do seem to be in an environment there where people want to get likes or views, and of course the loudest voices are going to get those views, and someone like me, I'm concerned about that. With my writing, I do want to note I am a political moderate, so in my writing I share my opinions, but a main theme of my writing is to get people to talk about our issues in a civil way, that we have to look at all sides of an issue and respect others' opinions. That one of my main themes is we have to reduce the divisiveness, and we can do that. We can get back to a place of where we used to say, I may not agree with what you're saying, but I'll defend your right to say it. And that's always been part of the American culture that we seem to have lost. A little bit about why I'm interested in this work. During the pandemic, I was appalled as an American that Asian Americans were being targeted for hate. The preposterous idea that someone was going to blame Asian Americans who may have been here for 2 or 3 generations on a disease that started out, COVID-19, in China, is just ridiculous. And now we're seeing rises in hate against Jews. I would say my first religion is, my first Bible is the United States Constitution. That's my New Testament, and my Old Testament is the Declaration of Independence. But I am proud of my Jewish heritage, and living in the American South, I've kind of I have a hybrid religion almost. At the end of the day, I am Jewish, but I consider myself to be a secular Christian. So now we're seeing, after October 7th, with the attack by Hamas on Israel, we're seeing a lot of hatred against Jews. Now with the war in Iran, we're also seeing a lot of hatred against Muslims, and it's never acceptable, that type of behavior. Our nation is one in which religious freedom, we defend that. We defend our diversity, and just like blaming Asian Americans on COVID, to blame an American who happens to be Jewish on the behavior of the Israeli government is not even, it's just not fair or appropriate. Basically, people who want to hate are looking for reasons to hate, and we need to address this. I come at this from the standpoint that the vast majority of Americans are not bigots, are not discriminatory, that they do want to return to a time when we can be more civil, and that's the motivation that we can get back to that. So I will go through each section here, and my hope is that this will be helpful. I call this a session because there are multiple exercises that I have, and I'll read a little bit here about the introduction. So there are three goals, and I won't go through every one of this. I have a kind of a several page document here, about 5 or 6 pages. So I'll give the highlights, if you will. So the first goal of this is to help us realize that we can accept our differences without becoming antagonistic to others, and certainly without resorting to violence against any individuals or groups. Too often today, again, as I said before, we find angry voices on social media who are just shouting at each other without any civil, in-depth discussion. We need more in-person, face-to-face interactions in which we can take the time to understand thoroughly others' viewpoints. The second goal of this session is to convince others to buy into the basic American ideals of protecting individual liberty and ensuring fairness. Thus, we view any type of discrimination, hatred, or prejudice of others as unacceptable and un-American. And we've seen increases in hate speech, which we must address. We must reject hate based on race, religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, sexual identity, and even political affiliation. And a note here that this does not mean that we cannot disagree with someone who is of a different race or religion from ourselves, just that we do not base our disagreements on an unfair bias or prejudice against someone. And the third goal, which may seem hypocritical, I say to the first two goals, is to emphasize that we do have shared values per our United States Constitution and democratic culture, which are non-negotiable, such as the guaranteeing of our core liberties, including freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, as outlined in our First Amendment. We also, as Americans, value democratic and secular government, democratic rule and secular government, free elections, and rule by the majority with respect for the minority. So in our system, religious theocracies, for whatever religious vision, tyrannical rule, or other oppressive governmental systems are not welcome here. We are a democracy. We are for individual liberties. And again, we are not a nation that wants to turn into a religious theocracy of any faith. So I have a note here regarding the time periods for each exercise. And each organization or class, this could be for a school, a civic organization, it's up to you to decide how much time you want to designate. So this is just a suggestion, but we have three exercises to start with. And so my suggestion is with exercises 1 through 3, 30 minutes or so for each exercise, 1 through 3. Another 30 minutes for the concluding discussion exercise, which would be everybody in the group, again, at your discretion, but that's the suggestion. And finally, perhaps 20 minutes for the final message section. And one suggestion is that a class or group of 20 or 30 or more participants may wish to set aside a full morning or full afternoon for these exercises. And that way you have flexibility to adjust throughout the session as need be. Another suggestion, if it's financially plausible, is to do this as a type of retreat to get away from the office, or for high school or college students to go somewhere off campus or a nice location on campus. And then another suggestion is to kind of combine this with some type of meal. Sometimes having individuals share a meal is a way to, as they say, break bread and learn more about one another and break down these walls that we have built. So I'll get started here on the first exercise. And exercise 1 is putting yourself in someone else's shoes. So as this old saying goes, when we view a situation or issue from others' viewpoints, given their specific backgrounds and environmental factors, we may never reach a point at which we are in total agreement with their opinions, but at least we can get an understanding of their perspective. This approach helps with achieving a compromise or reaching a consensus on how to solve a conflict. However, for this exercise, success is measured by being able to understand someone else's perspective and acknowledging others' legitimate concerns or outlooks on a subject or issue. So in this exercise 1, somewhat goes back to, although all the goals are kind of can be developed through a lot of these exercises and activities in this session, but we do go back to accepting our differences, that we can be accept that we have different opinions without becoming completely hostile to one another, if you will. So the suggestion is to break off in groups of 5 for these first 3 exercises. Again, we're here with exercise 1. And once you've broken off into each group should take about 5 minutes to read these questions. The participants will select one of the first 4 questions that they'll answer, and we'll take turns. We'll call that round 1. For round 2, everyone will have to answer number 5, the 5th question. And I do give some choices here. I wanted to make a note that I was debating back and forth of whether to leave some political leaning questions out, and I've tried to make it middle of the road as possible. But this is about talking about politics. I mean, that's how we can develop the skills to disagree with others. So, but what I've tried to do is give some choice here. So in case someone didn't want to get too hardcore into political beliefs, so for example, in one of the questions I say, discuss a favorite historical figure or your favorite celebrity, and from that we can break down some walls there, just to get to know someone. And for example, you might have a Democrat and a Republican, and the Republicans, their favorite celebrity is a sports hero, and then a Democrat might think, oh, that's my favorite, and the two people start discussing, and any factor such as that, as far as admiring the same historical figure or sports figure, can lead to more understanding and the willingness to that feeling of, hey, I've got something in common with them. They're just not the other. And that's what we have to get away from, that if you disagree with someone, they are of the other. And so this can be a positive step in that direction, even if someone doesn't want to answer a political question. Again, though, the main idea is that we're discussing politics and discussing our differences so we can learn to accept each other's different opinions and still possibly, if not, be civil, maybe even be friends. So I did want to make that note. So I'll read the questions here. Exercise 1 questions. Number 1, have you ever experienced a situation in which you felt like you were treated unfairly? Please explain. Question number 2, have you ever felt like an outsider? If so, how did the situation make you feel, and how would you have liked to have been treated differently? Number 3, could you be friends with someone who is of a different political party than you? Why or why not? Question 4, what was the greatest personal or professional obstacle that you overcame in your life, and how did it change you as a person? And finally, and that would be round 1. Each person would answer a question of their choice, questions 1 through 4. And the fifth question, everyone answer. But you have 3 choices on this exercise number 1. So question number 5, please answer one of the following 3 questions. The choices are A, what is the one political issue that you feel so strongly about that you could never see yourself compromising on or changing your opinion on at any time in the future, and why? B, what is one improvement that you would like to see in your community? Please explain. Or C, what is your favorite historical figure, and who is your favorite famous celebrity or sports star? Can be living or deceased, and why? And we'll go on to exercise number 2, live and let live. We must reject prejudice and hate. And this exercise addresses the core ideal of individual liberty and the protection of civil, equal, and one could say human rights that have continued to be extended to all Americans during our first 250 years. As we've experienced an increase in divisiveness, we have seen the tendency toward prejudice, hate, and violence based on factors such as race, religion, sexual identity, orientation. I would add in political affiliation. And I do say that, make a note here that we want to encourage people to exercise their freedom of speech, protesting, but anytime violence enters, we reject that. And I do put a note here, one of my heroes, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, he achieved so much in dismantling the inhumane institution of segregation in the American South by convincing his followers that they must dedicate themselves to protesting in a nonviolent manner. We've seen so much political violence that the key is we can protest, we can express ourselves, but violence is not acceptable. And it's the same format in exercise number 2 as in exercise number 1. You get, everybody picks one of the first 4 questions to answer, and then everybody answers the 5th question. So I will read those. And something I note here is that when the participant is taking their turn in answering a question, the other participants need to listen actively and not interrupt. And each participant is also asked to do their part when they're answering the question to explain. Just don't say, I just disagree with something, provide explanation. And so then we can have that understanding that of where people can recognize, okay, I disagree with them, but I see where, at least I see from where they're coming from. So here are the questions. Number 1, what are your thoughts on how the Asian American community became a target of violence and hate during the COVID-19 pandemic? Question number 2, what is your opinion on the issue of how Jews in the United States and throughout the world have been targeted for hate and violence after the Hamas October 7, 2023 attack on Israeli civilians, including women and children? Question number 3, do you have an opinion on the issue on how those of the Muslim faith have been targets of discrimination and violence during the war between Israel and Hamas, or since the war began between U.S. and Iran? What is your opinion on the plight of Palestinian civilians who have suffered tremendously as victims during the war between Israel and Hamas? And with this number 3, one or both of these questions can be answered. So a little bit of choice there in this exercise number 2, question number 3. So question number 4, do you think it is fair that Russians living abroad are being targeted and mistreated because of the Russian invasion into Ukraine? Is it fair to blame citizens of a nation for behavior that the government carries out, particularly if that government is not elected fairly by the people? And I saw something on social media. It was a young woman from Russia, and she was saying that she had experienced some discrimination because when people found out she was from Russia and they were pro-Ukraine. So you see that type of situation. That's where we want to get away from. We can disagree with what a government does, but we don't take it out on the person. Everybody's an individual, and certainly if you live under Vladimir Putin's regime and this individual is now living in America, so obviously she would understand well, we should understand where she is coming from, that she left that nation to come to a free country. So that type of behavior, that someone's from Russia, we're going to treat them badly because of the war in Ukraine, isn't appropriate. And question number 5, please answer any of the following 3 questions. A, are you in favor of reparations to African Americans for slavery? B, what are your thoughts on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives? Do they contribute to more equal opportunity and fairness, or do they promote more division between people? Or C, how do you think we can reduce prejudice and hate in our society? Please explain. And the next exercise is about our shared values. Again, in the introduction, I say that there are certain things that we don't negotiate on. And so, here, these are some of those factors and ideas that we hold so dear. The idea of that we're a democracy ruled by the people, that we have individual liberty. These are non-negotiable. We don't negotiate on these factors. We don't negotiate that we have a constitution that we live up to, a Declaration of Independence. We reject a government that's run by a few or a theocracy. And so this exercise number 3 is titled Our Shared Values Are Democracy and Individual Liberty. And it's the same format. In exercise number 3, everyone answers questions 1 through 4. They have a choice of answering questions 1 through 4, answering 1, and then everyone answers question 5 in the second round. The first round is, again, answering one of the first 4 questions for each individual in the group, and then round 2 is everyone answering number 5, but there are 3 different subsets of questions in question number 5, so people in that round 2 have a choice. So I will read these questions. 1, what is your opinion of democracy and rule by the people versus other forms of government, such as when one leader or a few leaders impose their will and desire on the rest of the population? Number 2, why are our First Amendment rights as set out in our United States Constitution, such as freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, and freedom of the press, important to you? Question number 3, do you think our founding fathers were great men and that they set up a democratic republic with guarantees for individual freedom, along with checks and balances for those in power? Question number 4, and this is like an opposing, because today there are people who have different opinions of our founding fathers. And so in this question number 4, I asked, do you think the historical reverence and admiration for our founding fathers is not justified, given that some of them were slave owners and held prejudice towards Native Americans? If so, how do you balance this opinion with the democratic principles established by the founding fathers, which did lead to the expansion of rights and liberties to all Americans, including African Americans and women? So I am being a little leading there, but to be honest, I come on this side of the equation, which I do have great respect for our founding fathers, and it's important to discuss their shortcomings, but I always say we hold them in high regard, not because they were men of their time, but because they were visionaries of our time, that they set out these ideals of freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and we have to understand that the time they were living in, it's not to provide that as an excuse. It's to say, though, that they set down the foundation for us to gain, to extend freedoms to all people in our nation, and so I have a balanced view with that, and I still hold dear to that. But of course, people can disagree. Although I think the idea is that we should all agree that this Constitution is something that has progressed, and that we all should hold dear for its ideals of individual freedom, liberty, and democracy. That's a non-negotiable. And then we come to number 5, and everyone answers this in round 2, this question in round 2, number 5, and they have a choice of 3 different options. Question number 5, Please answer one of the following questions. A, do you have a sense of patriotism as a citizen of the United States? Why or why not? B, what about living in a free society with individual liberties and democracy are you most thankful for and why? C, what improvements would you like to see in our nation that would benefit more people? These could be political, economic, or social. The next exercise or activity, I would say, of this session is what I would call a concluding discussion. And with this could be the whole class or group coming back together, and the facilitator or teacher would throw out these questions, and participants could answer, could volunteer to answer. So I have, let's see, I think there are seven questions here that the facilitator could ask the group. Question 1, did your strongly held viewpoint of others with an opposing opinion change at all for the better when they offered their thoughts and explanations during the above exercise? Please explain. Question number 2, did anything that anyone said today about their own experiences or political beliefs change your political perspective on any issue, even if it was just a small change? Please explain your answer. Question number 3, did you feel that you were better heard today and respected for your beliefs and opinions? Why or why not, or how could the process have been improved? Constructive feedback is welcome. And I stress that is that we want people to express themselves, even if it's something that may be viewed as negative, as we want to get that feedback so that everyone is heard, and that we can go away in which people feel like, hey, at least I've been heard, at least someone listened to me. And sometimes that's all it takes to bringing people into a more harmonious, or if not harmonious, at least a more civil feeling and environment to move forward as a group and as a society. Let's see, question number 4, did participating in these exercises make you feel more open to dialogue with those who may disagree with you politically? Please explain. And this goes back to the idea that everybody's in their own clusters. It's interesting how people are separating themselves so much these days, and we want to get out of that, everybody in their own little world. We want everybody to come into general society, and we'll figure out how to compromise on how we want to live and how we want to debate and discuss and interact. But the idea here is that we have to get outside our own, kind of take down the fences, take down the walls, and start interacting with each other again. And in question number 5, do you have an opinion on how we can become less divided as a nation? So we want to hear people discuss what they think. How do we move forward and reduce the division, to break down the walls? Question number 6, do you have an opinion on how we can end the hate and prejudice that leads to discrimination and violence based on race, religion, sexual identity, etc.? Question number 7, can you commit or recommit to our democratic values and support of individual liberties and rights? So the teacher facilitator should allow, if time permits, anyone who wishes to share their thoughts to speak, even if they aren't especially positive, as this can lead to more discussions on how to address issues effectively. The goal is not for those participating in this exercise to have a temporary or imaginary sense that everything is wonderful and everyone from here on out will get along. That's not the goal here. The overall goal is just to expose a diverse group of people to others' perspectives and get some discussions or a bit of collaboration initiated. So we're not saying we're going to solve everything, even on a small scale, within an organization or within society, within the community. That's not the expectation, but every little step. There's some saying about throwing a pebble in the pond and the ripple effect and that sort of thing. So we're looking for incremental changes. the final section, the final activity is a message to participants, and it's kind of food for thought. And what I've written is a general message here that your organization may want to use or not use, or come up with your own message. The general idea is to reduce divisiveness, improve communication, to recommit ourselves to our American ideals of live and let live, protecting individual liberty, protecting freedom of thought, speech, to even the idea of protecting life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? To do that, we have to have a peaceful civil society. So part of it is dedicating ourselves to a democracy in which people can speak and they have some sense of safety, that we have civility, safety, respect for others. So this final section, and I'll read this, the final message to participants and to observers, and that's the title of this final activity session. The final message to participants can mirror the statements below, or it can be tailored specifically to emphasize the session's goals for the day as intended by the organizational leaders. One suggestion is a message that emphasizes respect for individual liberty and the support of our democratic principles and foundational systems, as set out in our original sacred texts, such as the U.S. Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. A sample message could be presented as per the following. Americans are deeply divided today, but we can find common ground in the manner in which we interact, discuss, and even, yes, disagree. Social media encourages and rewards the loud noise, rude arguing, and insults being shared at lightning fast speed. This is not an environment that encourages, yes, heated, but civil debate and discussion, which should be the standard for how we should engage in political dialogue in our free society. And just as an aside here is that, yes, we want heated debate, we want discussion. That's what democracy is all about, but we don't want it to turn violent. We don't want it to turn antagonistic. We want it to be heated debate. At the end of the day, everybody goes out for pizza. That's the environment that we want. Something comes to mind about President Reagan, a Republican, and Tip O'Neill, a Democratic leader in the House. I can't quite remember his title, but that after they had a battle between Congress and in the White House, Tip O'Neill and President Reagan, they would get together for a drink together in the White House, or to have a meal together, and that's what we want to get back to in our politics, that it's not so divisive, and we can get there. So just wanted to throw that out there. So so protecting individual rights and liberties of all Americans, even of those who we disagree with, is an act of patriotism that we must renew and instill in our children. We have been a nation that has extended individual liberties to minorities and women throughout our history, and we value diversity. There is a limit to our value of diversity as Americans, however, in that we recognize as threats to our freedom those who call for the United States to turn into a theocracy, regardless of the religious doctrine, or who wish to do away with our Constitution and democratic system of elections. We do reject such philosophies as they do not coincide with our core fundamental systems, which are based on freedom and democracy. Furthermore, our culture champions those who seek to express their political opinions and exercise their freedom in the pursuit of protesting that which they view as unjust. Given this cultural reality, once citizens choose to engage in any violence or act as obstacles to the normal functioning of everyday civil society, i.e. acts of riots, looting, or violence against others, then it is no longer acceptable behavior regardless of how ethical the intentions of the original peaceful protests were. And so I kind of bring this up because it goes back to political violence. And here I say, furthermore, we reject all acts of political violence that have arisen in recent years from both sides of the political spectrum. So protesting is great, and that comes in different forms, but once we get out into the form of protesting and then it turns violent, then that's not acceptable in civil society. And of course, given the political violence from both sides of the political aisle, and I think about who's Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated, the Republican spokesperson who would go to college campuses and debate students, and then we have the attempts on the life of President Trump. We really have to come to a point that we change our culture and find ways to really lower that heat, lower the tension, to calm things down, and we can do it. But of course, political violence is not acceptable in our society. And I'm coming to the end here, and so just what I'm saying is that it is important to note that a primary goal of these exercises is to reduce the hate and division among us. Thus, while these exercises are intended to encourage respect of others' viewpoints, this does not and should not mean having to endure listening to opinions that are intended as hate or call for outright discrimination of any individual or groups based on personal attributes such as race, religion, sexual identity, etc. And in this, what I'm saying is, I don't want to get into a constitutional discussion. Is hate speech protected speech? And it may be. I'm not an attorney, but we do have freedom of speech. But the idea in this setting, it's controlled, and we want to hear what people have to say. But of course, those type of statements, which can be false and hurtful, and which are false most of the time if it's discriminatory, definitely false. And so we don't want to allow that type of speech to be perpetuated. And I think that goes without saying, but I said it anyway. But having said this, these exercises were designed with the outlook that while we have a lot of disagreement about issues, politically or otherwise, the majority of Americans are not at their core outright bigots, racists, or follow other supremacy ideologies emphasizing discrimination or prejudice against others. Most Americans by far are reasonably minded and do want to be fair, even if they hold their beliefs very firmly. It is an aspiration of these exercises that participants find that there are elements of consensus on many hot topic and divisive issues that we can focus on as a beginning for collaboration, or at least civility. Hopefully, participants will recognize the commonalities that we all share, such as the desire for economic opportunities, safe communities, and access to affordable health care. And then my final paragraph here is, and again, each group can come up with their own final statements. This is just what I'm providing as a suggestion. So finally, we leave you today with one question just to ponder at your convenience. Would you consider having a meal or organizing a social activity with others who have a different political outlook than you? These exercises that you have participated in today can serve as the beginning for us to find common ground and move forward together to promote more peace and collaboration rather than division. Thank you for your participation today. Enjoy the rest of your day. So these are the activities, exercises. They can be adjusted, catered to what you would like to focus on. Again, but the overall goal is to reduce the divisiveness by having people interact in a safe space. Because at times I make fun of the safe space. I know for some people that's the new, or maybe not that new, a turn of phrase that we use to say that people are safe to express themselves. But it is important. It is important that we have safe spaces, and that's my hope is that these exercises will be conducted in environments that are safe spaces for everyone to share their thoughts, regardless of where they are on the political spectrum. The ultimate goal is that people start talking to each other, that we kind of combat what is going on in social media. And at times, it's hard to tell what's real or what's not real on social media, especially with AI. Big ChatGPT fan here, I use that a lot, so I'm not against AI, but just like with social media, we have to have some limits and constraints. I hope your group finds these exercises helpful. I if anyone has questions, I can be reached by email, and I check on it regularly. That is encent21@yahoo.com, and I will put that in this this class description, this course, this session, whatever we want to call it, description. I hope you find this helpful. Also, check out on Classful my class on a debate exercise that I also think is very helpful to reducing the divisiveness. My last message is together we can reduce the hate. Whether someone is Asian American, they are Jewish American, I call myself an American of Jewish descent, whether they are Muslim American, African American, whatever religion they are, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, the United States of America is a place where everyone should feel that they can live in peace and pursue their dreams. This past summer, and I'll close with this, is that we have people from all over the world coming to the United States. A lot of Europeans were amazed. Yes, we have free refills and air conditioning, but they were amazed at the friendliness of Americans, and that's what we're going to get back to, is that we are a friendly people, and at times it seems that we've forgotten that. We need to relearn how to be friendly to each other, and this is the start. We can start here just by talking to one another, having a meal with one another, saying hello to someone who you don't normally say hello to find those commonalities that we share. Thanks so much for choosing this PDF, for watching the video. I hope you and your organizations will find this helpful. Have a great day. Be well, be safe.